I remember thinking, how can we trust anything now? This single act eroded confidence in the US dollar and kicked off a global financial crisis. People all over the world lost faith in currencies and banking systems, so much so that for a while, gold actually became worthless. At the time, I saw people lose fortunes overnight, entire life savings wiped out in a matter of seconds, and it scared me. It was my first lesson in what's about to happen in 2025. Over the next few months, we'll see a series of unprecedented events that will shake our world like never before. But unlike in 1971, this time there's no turning back. There's no going back to the way things were. Once this new era begins, it will change everything, and it won't be for the better. We are entering an age of chaos, of disruption, of complete uncertainty, and it's happening right now. Right now, there are forces at play that are deliberately pushing us toward this breaking point. What I'm about to share with you is not a doomsday prediction. It's not some abstract economic theory. It's based on historical patterns, on the actions of those in power, and on the reactions of the people. Everything I've seen tells me this is just the calm before the storm, and here's why. The Federal Reserve is about to make a big mistake. They don't realize it yet, but they're about to do something that will have far-reaching consequences. It's the same mistake they made after the 2008 crash, when they lowered interest rates to almost zero. Now, just like then, people will think the Fed is coming to save the day. But this time, it won't work. The storm is coming, and it will hit us all. Some will be prepared and some won't. But one thing is for sure, nothing will ever be the same. So I ask you, are you prepared? Do you have a plan? Or will you just let the storm take you by surprise? You need to be ready. Whether you're watching this in the near future or in 2025, the future is not set in stone. It's not a foregone conclusion. You have the power to shape it, to influence it. If you understand what's happening now, if you see the signs, you can position yourself to thrive. Yes, thrive. Even in the midst of this chaos, there will be opportunities, but they won't last long. The window is closing. Time is running out. Don't wait. Act now. Don't just watch this unfold. Be a part of the solution. Don't be a victim of the chaos. If you're not ready to take action now, if you feel like the storm is far away, take a moment to really think about it, about what's happening right now. Because in the world of finance, time is the most valuable commodity. And I want you to have enough of it. I want you to be prepared. Remember, this isn't just a financial crisis. It's an era of chaos and transformation. Are you ready for it? So I'm on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. It's 2008. The market is collapsing. My question is, how bad will it get? So I look at the smartest people on Wall Street. What do? They have no idea. That's when it hits me. Everything revolved around money. The problem? They simply didn't have enough gold to support the system. Money stopped being real, and as a consequence, it lost value. I walked onto the floor of the New York Stock Exchange expecting a collapse, a brutal crash. But what happened was the exact opposite. The market exploded upward. That was the moment I realized I wasn't prepared. I had never experienced true monetary devaluation before. So I dove into history, and there it was, March 1933. Roosevelt, speaking to the nation over the radio, announced a decision that was almost identical. The same pattern repeated nearly a century earlier. I kept digging. I went through the 1930s. I uncovered what happened in 1938. With the depression that pushed the world to the brink of war. And once again, the signs were there. Interest rates falling all the way to zero. It was thanks to that study, that obsession with understanding the past, that we were able to make a lot of money during the 2008 financial crisis. While the world was panicking, we already knew what was coming. And why? Because I had seen this movie before. That's when three patterns began to emerge. Patterns that, until then, had never happened right before our eyes, at least not in our generation. But they had already occurred many times throughout history. I had to go back in time. I needed to understand the cycles. The first pattern, an explosion in debt creation. And along with it, a crazy amount of money printing. Debt at historic levels. Money printers running at full speed. This matters a lot because this is what leads to the rise and fall of reserve currencies. And understanding how this system works is key to predicting collapse. But this was only the first sign. Let's go back to the beginning of the 21st century. It was a time of great optimism. People believed that we had entered a new era of peace and prosperity, but I saw something different. I saw 5 disruptive signs that foretold the future. The first was the unthinkable resurgence of authoritarianism. Suddenly, countries around the world began embracing autocratic measures. They limited freedom of speech, curtailed dissent, and seized control of the media. The most alarming part, some were even called democracies. The second sign was the drastic rise in internal conflicts. Political polarization, populism gaining momentum from both the left and the right. But what exactly is a populist? Someone who doesn't govern for everyone. Someone who speaks only to their base. And when both sides refuse to give in, when no one is willing to lose, democracy begins to collapse. The result? It's events like what we saw on January 6th, a clear sign that the system is breaking down. And this doesn't happen by accident. There is a hidden dynamic behind this movement, and it's dangerous. The third sign was even more alarming. The conflict between global powers, the rise of a new economic and military force, China, directly competing with the United States. New power game is taking shape. It could completely redefine the world order. Sometimes we ignore what truly matters. We overlook the most powerful forces that shape the fate of entire empires. So I went even further back in time. I discovered 2 more elements, 2 devastating factors that have repeatedly changed the course of history. The first, the relentless force of nature. Droughts, floods, pandemics. These natural events have killed more people, destroyed more civilizations, and brought down more empires than anything else. And today, they remain a very real threat. The second, technology. Innovations change everything. Military power, economic power, and control of information. That's when I understood. There are 5 major forces that shape history, and all of them are active right now. I needed to understand the cycles, but not just because they repeat. That would be blind faith. I wanted to understand why they happen. What are the cause and effect relationships hidden behind the patterns? That's how I dove into the study of the 10 most powerful empires of the past 500 years, and the 3 reserve currencies that dominated the world: the Dutch Empire and the guilder, the British Empire and the pound, the rise and the beginning of the decline of the American Empire and the dollar, and finally, the Chinese Empire, and its surprising return to the game. All of this, accompanied by major conflicts, cycles measured, repeated. And now, forming once again. Now, let me ask you a question. What if you could predict the outcome of any negotiation? You'd win every time. You'd never overpay for a car. You'd get the best deal on your next apartment. You'd have money, power, and influence. Well, you actually can. It's easy. You just need the right mindset. And this is where the 4th Industrial Revolution will help you. Because here's the truth. Every 500 years, the world changes completely. New technologies reshape societies, economies, and even our daily lives. And this transformation is happening right now. But you don't have to face it alone. University has a unique approach. Professors teach you to think strategically and see the bigger picture. The curriculum covers everything from understanding the new technologies shaping our world to predicting their impact on industries and economies. Plus, you can connect with other brilliant minds, share ideas, and learn from each other. Best of all, it's an online university. This means you can fit learning into your busy life, all at your own pace. And with flexible payment plans, world-class education has never been more accessible. Are you ready to secure your future in this rapidly changing world? There are some big changes coming to the world order, and it's happening much faster than you think. This is the 4th turning point in the last 600 years. But what do I mean by this? Well, look around you. You're living in the era of globalization, the result of 7 decades of peace and prosperity led by the United States. But behind this apparent stability, an unstoppable change is taking place. The balance of power is shifting, and soon a new world order will emerge from the chaos. Of course, looking at all this data at once can seem overwhelming. So I decided to focus on the four most relevant empires for our time: the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, the United States, and China. When we plot these empires on a timeline, a surprising pattern emerges. Each of these cycles lasted, on average, 250 years. And between the end of one empire and the rise of the next, there's always a transition period, 10 to 20 years. And almost always it's marked by conflict, because dominant empires don't go down quietly, they fight. To understand this cycle, I used 8 essential metrics, all measurable, all historical: education, innovation, and technological advancement, global market competitiveness, economic output, share of world trade, military power, influence of the financial system and capital markets, and the strength of the currency as a global reserve. With these indicators, we can clearly see who is rising, who is falling, and who has already passed the tipping point. When we observe these repeated sequences across dozens of countries over centuries, a typical cycle begins to reveal itself. Better education leads to more innovation. More innovation brings technological power. Over time, that translates into a strong currency, a global currency. That's where a new empire begins. The Dutch were the first to create a modern financial system, but also the first to lose their dominant position. The British took over from there and created the largest empire in history, but now it's over. The US took over the role of the leading empire in the early 1900s, but their time at the top is also coming to an end. Now, a new empire is rising in the east, China. But this transition period won't be peaceful. There'll be conflict. Wars, financial crises, pandemics, climate refugees, food shortages, cyber attacks, and terrorism will destabilize the world. These are the storm clouds on the horizon. Over the next 20 years, China will surpass the US in economic power. It's not a prediction, it's already happening. By 2030, China could have the most innovative economy in the world. And by 2040, China will surpass the US military spending. In 5 years, China will produce half of the world's high-speed rail. In 10 years, China will have 3 times more scientists and engineers. In 20 years, China will have 6 times more. As the Chinese gain more and more technological power, the dollar will lose its strength. Other currencies will take its place. The Chinese currency, the yuan, will become the world's global currency. This is the inevitable rise of the Middle Kingdom. So if you want to be prepared for the changes that are coming, subscribe and follow for more updates. So let me get it straight. We're in the middle of a global crisis. People are struggling just to pay their bills. Inflation is still high. Prices aren't coming down. Economic growth has slowed. Recession is on the horizon. Global trade is weakening. Central banks are raising rates. Fiscal tightening is ongoing. And on top of all of this, there's a growing sense of instability and fear. Why? Well, because we're about to enter a perfect storm of multiple risks coming together at once. And the worst part is that these risks are interconnected, and they are becoming more systemic by the day. Take the United States, for instance. It's already showing clear signs. We're seeing consumer spending begin to shrink. Debt payments are rising, while government revenues remain flat or decline. So that means one thing: less room to handle the next crisis. Less revenue means less investment, less innovation, less growth, and eventually, much higher taxes. In other words, stagnation. And the bigger problem here is that the US isn't alone. Governments all over the world are facing the same challenges. The UK, for instance, is already in recession. Europe is stagnating. Japan is contracting. And emerging markets are struggling to stay afloat. When we talk about governments, we often see them as these huge, powerful entities that can solve problems with just a stroke of a pen. But the truth is, they're not. They're simply a reflection of the economy. And when the economy slows down, so does the government. Now, add on top of this a growing number of people who believe that globalization is a mistake, that free trade is a scam, that corporations are evil, and that politicians are corrupt. And you have the perfect condition for a financial crisis. Let's put it this way. When people lose faith in the system, they sell. Sell their stocks, their bonds, their currencies, anything that could potentially lose value. And if enough people do this at the same time, you get a panic. And panics, as we know, spread fast. Now, the biggest risk in this scenario is just around the corner. If investors lose confidence and begin selling bonds en masse, the Federal Reserve and other central banks will have to step in again, buying trillions in bonds, printing even more money. And if this happens during the next major economic downturn, which many analysts predict will happen between now and 2029, we're talking about an extremely risky point for the entire global financial system. And this brings me to the second big risk: populism. Populism is on the rise, left or right, doesn't matter. Both sides are becoming more radical and fighting to win at any cost. That tears the social fabric of any nation and adds yet another layer of instability. Look at what happened in the UK with Liz Truss. Her plan was to lower taxes to boost the economy. But instead of doing that, she crashed the pound. And with that, the entire country. And if populist movements continue gaining ground around the world, cooperation becomes even more difficult. Trade wars become hotter. Conflicts become larger. And at some point, it might all implode. Now, I'm not trying to be alarmist here. I'm simply connecting the dots. And if you look carefully, you can see that something's not right. We've had years of reckless spending. We've had decades of outsourcing jobs overseas. We've had a global pandemic. We've had a war in Ukraine. We're now facing the consequences. Think with me for a moment. Populism, financial crises, geopolitical conflict. This is the recipe for chaos. It's easy to dismiss each of these issues individually. That's just politics. That's just economics. That's just foreign policy. But when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, you see that we're reaching a tipping point. Capitalism, despite everything it's brought us, needs deep structural reform. It simply doesn't allocate resources well to where we need them most. Education, healthcare, the environment. The cost of climate change, for instance, isn't even being accounted for. And more. In the US, for example, the quality of education varies dramatically between rich and poor regions. That perpetuates inequality and that breeds collapse. We're at a crossroads, and the path ahead is uncertain. Between now and early 2025, we face four big challenges. First, geopolitical shocks, especially between the US and China. Second, financial crises and fiscal tightening. Third, technological advances with both creative and destructive potential. And fourth, climate change that's becoming increasingly expensive and violent. These challenges aren't going away. You can see that clearly. But there's a silver lining. History shows us that great crises are not the end. They're the turning point. The turning point for what? For a new world order? A new world order that demands new leaders, new systems, and new ways of doing things. We've seen this happen before. After World War II, for instance, the US and Europe rebuilt themselves and became the dominant global powers. After the fall of the Soviet Union, China emerged as an economic powerhouse. And after the global financial crisis of 2008, central banks took control of the world's finances. Each of these moments was a turning point, a moment where winners became losers and losers became winners. But here's the important part. These turning points didn't happen overnight, played out over decades. And the same is true today. The turning point that we're in now will play out over the next 10, 20, 50 years. It's too early to say who will win and who will lose. But what we can say is that the world won't be the same ever again. And that raises an essential question. Do we want to be part of the solution or part of the problem? Do we want to help build the new world, or do we want to tear down the old? As always, you decide. If you enjoyed this content and want to keep exploring topics like investments, economic cycles, global crises, and how to thrive even in the hardest times, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next episodes, because here, we show you what's behind what no one else is saying. See you in the next video. Till then.